evening. We'll call the Finance Committee meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. It is 6:01. First item on our agenda is Resolution 4223, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the Fire Impact District 1 Fund and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the Fairfield County Auditor. This is coming out of safety. Mr. Matlin.
Yeah, Police Chief Maffin's here. This was, I think, a clerical error.
He just called you police chief.
You said
Yeah,
police chief.
Gracious.
Fire Chief Maffin. That's a lack of respect on my part.
You can call you David.
You've been promoted, Chief.
Can I go back and sit down and start this over?
Take two.
There was testing and you.
Go ahead,
Fire Chief
introduce
Maffin's
yourself.
here to explain. This was I think, just a clerical error from a truck that was ordered back in 21.
Yep. Yeah, so we did the legislation for Medic 4, which is still not on the production line. Back in July of 21, it was approved to come out of the fire impact fees, and money was moved, and on our end, the administrative assistant we had a couple ago, it was an oversight. The money, or the PO never got encumbered, so the money went back into the carryover, and we're just asking to fix it so that we can cut the PO for the truck that should be delivered, I know, sometime after May is the best answer I have for you right now.
Any questions for Chief Maffin? Yes, Mrs.
And I almost called you Chief of Police, sorry. I'm so sorry.
I started it.
Nick needs to quit.
So that truck, and we're locked into that amount,
Yes.
correct? I would just want to make sure everybody knows that we're locked in.
Yeah, nothing's changed with the price.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Thank you. Mr. Matlin, what's your pleasure?
It's gonna be Mr. James second, and we're gonna go 3 readings because,
Three
again, the
readings.
truck's not expected till May.
Okay, sounds good. 3 readings on 4223. Next item we have on the agenda is Resolution 4323, a resolution authorizing the issuance of a then and now certificate for PNC Visa for the Fairfield County Municipal Court's annual TASER payment for Axon Enterprises. So Jackie Long was here to speak about this, but this is pretty straightforward. If you recall, when she spoke to us about her budget earlier in January, I believe, she actually mentioned coming back from a vacation around January 10th or so, and she had these bills that needed paid. This bill is for the tasers used by the court in case they need them, probation officers, et cetera. So this contract was paid on a PNC card, and the bill is due. It's $4,300, and this is something, again, that was in their 23 budget and previously approved by us. Because of the fact that we'd like to pay this bill in a timely manner, I'll ask for suspension. Mrs. Kreitz, would you be the second on that one? Anybody have any questions about that? I thought it was fairly straightforward. All right. The next item on our agenda is Resolution 4423, a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids for the 2023 sewer rehabilitation project that's coming out of water, wastewater. Mr. James.
Thank you, Chairman McDaniel. I'm going to invite Mr. Stephen Wellstead to the podium. I know he sent emails out to all the council members to explain it, which he so ably does all the time, but I'm going to give him an opportunity now to go over it a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Good evening, everybody. I don't have too much more to add, but just to kind of rehash, again, this is a project that's going to rehab various sewers around the city. We started in 2021 with some annual CCTV work by an outside consultant, EMH&T, and they've given us recommendations on various sewers that they've found issues in or concerns in. Nothing immediately concerning that requires us to immediately go in, but again, something that, given the age and condition, that should be addressed sooner rather than later. So based on some findings of theirs, we've collected a variety of sewers, both storm and sanitary, together, and are going to get those rehabbed with a CIPP lining technology, which will allow us to essentially put kind of this liner inside the pipe and give it some strength, and do so without digging up streets, and should get it done relatively quickly. Be happy to answer any questions anybody might have, but otherwise that's pretty much the quick overview.
Any questions for Mr. Wellstead? The list of sewers is on the agenda there. the ones that need rehab. Seeing no questions, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. James, what's your pleasure?
Once again, just as a reminder, this is just giving City Service Director Paul Martin the opportunity to go out for bid. We'll ask Ms. Teener to second it, and we will go a full 3 readings on this.
3 readings on 4423. The next item we have on the agenda is Resolution 4523, a resolution strongly urging the Ohio Governor and members of the Ohio General Assembly to restore the local government fund to pre-recession levels. This is coming out of finance. I'm going to ask Law Director Hall to kind of go over this. We had communicated via email. Would you explain our reasoning for this?
Sure, absolutely. The synopsis that you included on the finance agenda pretty much covers it, but we got a call to action email from the Ohio Municipal League late last week, I believe, indicating that some of the things that they had heard about the budget process that the General Assembly is starting to undertake may not bode well for cities and our local government funds. And so they asked everyone to show their support for restoring local government funds to the level they were at pre-recession. And so I consulted with the auditor, and she was kind enough to provide me with some data. And you see the numbers in the synopsis. I won't go over all of them, but essentially they started reducing in 2008 what we were getting, and then in 2011 they cut it in half, a little less than half actually. And so OML wants to see all of those funds eventually restored to the local governments because it did result in such a loss of revenue that the state basically used to balance their budget on our backs. And so in order to do the math on what we had lost overall, because OML was very interested in knowing what everybody around the state had lost out on as a result of those reductions, I took 1.8 million, which was conservatively the number that we were getting in 2011 and prior. And then I reduced, or I subtracted the money that we actually got and then added all of those years up together. So it's approximately 9.8 million. And then if you go back to 2008, when they started kind of chipping away at it, it's actually 10.2 million. But either way, that's a lot of money that we all could have, used here in the city versus giving away to the state. So it seemed reasonable, and I asked Chairman McDaniel if he would sponsor legislation to urge the governor and the General Assembly to restore local government funds, and that's what we're asking you to do with this piece.
Any questions for the law director on this? So we've spoken about this particular topic previously, actually a couple of years ago. If you recall, and it's listed some of the information is listed in this synopsis of, our losses and changes. When Governor Kasich was in office, he targeted the local government fund. Specifically, these were funds that the counties received from sales tax, and we received a portion of those funds also. Promises made to the communities back when the state of Ohio wanted to pass the sales tax were that you would receive some of this to offset some of your budgets. And that happened for years until Governor Kasich decided he didn't want it to happen anymore. He specifically balanced the state's budget on the backs of the communities. And yes, state income taxes were lowered. What happened to municipal income taxes? All cities throughout the state, if they wanted to serve their community, had to raise local taxes. So you may have saved a dime or two on state taxes, but you paid it on the other end in local taxes. This resolution is just telling the state, the governor, and the General Assembly that we feel that was improper and it should not have happened, and we would like our share as promised. And we'd like it to go back to the original funding that was there before the recession. Yes, Ms.
I know we don't like to suspend, but does this need to go 3 readings?
No, there's no reason that it needs to go 3 readings. It was just, the fact that we want to get it in
Well,
before the
I
budget
don't know
process gets
if
too
it's
prolonged.
something it's gonna benefit us. I don't know that we need to go through.
Anyone have any
It's up to
feelings
you.
on suspension, not suspending? I know we have encouraged people not to suspend, but this is just a resolution affirming our stand on this particular issue. I don't think suspension would be out of line. Any issues? All right. Any other questions or comments? So we will ask for suspensions. Mrs. Kreitz, will you be my second on that? Are there any departmental updates?
Oh, sorry. You go right ahead.
GIS?
Hi, Scott Snyder, GIS Manager. Tonight, we're on the second reading, trying to pass temporary resolution 3923 for my department. It's the sole source contract to renew our asset management software. Last meeting, I neglected to note for your benefit that this is budgeted, so there's no money that needs to be encumbered, or needs to be appropriated for this. We've already got it set aside, so that's all I want to share. If there are any more questions, be free. I'd be happy to take them, but it's pretty straightforward.
Any questions on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the fire chief's coming forward now.
I'm behind this guy.
Fire chief is coming down.
You go ahead. We, yeah.
Well, I'd introduce myself, but
Sorry.
Councilman Matlin already did that for me earlier. Staying on the theme of vehicles, I just wanted to let everybody know that we're about to order the replacement for Medic One. It's for our regular cycle of replacing trucks, and given the lead out time before this truck's going to be done, which they're projecting 2025, excuse me, that is when that truck is going to need to go out of service as a frontline. I didn't write legislation for this because the money was written into the budget that was approved for, our budget for 2023. So I just wanted to let everybody know that truck's going to be ordered probably this week.
Any questions for Chief Maffin? 2025, you say?
Yep.
Wow.
Crazy.
I guess that's the nature of that type of equipment.
Well, the one we've got legislation tonight was ordered in 21, so it'll be almost a solid 2 years out.
Yeah.
And there's another one coming was that year also, so.
Yeah, we've got Medic 3 and Medic 4 right now. Both of the chassis, I was told last week, are finally at the builder. Medic 3 will go on the line soon, and they're projecting about 8 weeks to finish that build, and then Medic 4 will come on the line after that. So in order to get the chassis, and we've got a place to order now.
Any other questions? Thank you. Law Director Hall?
Your turn.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Appreciate it, Police Chief. So I had a couple of questions over the last week or so from both administration and council people regarding the Board of Park, or the Board of Park Commissioners and the letting of contracts from the Board of Park Commissioners, and why that has to come to City Council. So the Board of Park Commissioners is covered by Section 75.11 of the Ohio Revised Code, and it says the Board of Park Commissioners in the letting of contracts shall be governed by Section 735.05 to 735.09, inclusive of the Ohio Revised Code. And so if you go to 735.05, it's just the same exact process that the Director of Public Service is required to undergo for any expenditure over $50,000. So even though it's budgeted in the Board of Park Commissioners budget, and you all have approved, all of the appropriations, it's still, any contract over $50,000 still has to come back to the legislative authority per Ohio Revised Code, if that makes sense. And I just want to give anybody an opportunity to ask a question about that if they needed to.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other departmental updates? Yes,
I
ma'am.
just have a comment about that particular issue. The level to go out to bid has been 50,000 for nearly 15 years. And 50,000 won't buy what it used to. So we have started a campaign to get the legislature to change the ORC, to raise it to something more reasonable, like $100,000, which, any government entity like counties, cities, villages, townships, even organizations like NOPEC, which is governed by the city, and MORPC are all required to go out to bid for anything over $50,000. And it seems that with inflation over the last 15 years, it's time that got raised. So I've already communicated with Senator Schaefer and Representative LaRae the Ohio Mayor's Alliance and Warp C, and we'll be following up with Central Ohio Mayors and Managers and Municipal League here in the very near future to start a campaign. And I guess I need to talk to Mr. Wing sitting in the back because his boss is the chair of that committee. So at break, I'll be following up with him.
Thank you. Any other departmental updates? Seeing none, we'll move on to tonight's meeting prep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have temporary resolution 27-23 and a motion to amend and replace coming from Mr. Ehlers. Mr. Ehlers, do you want to walk us through this?
Yeah. In the legislation, in the whereas section, it stated that both the Parks Department and the city engineers would have power over their money. And I spoke with the law director and Tricia and Paul about the issue. And it just seemed it was a little confusing for members, me specifically, maybe other members as well. And so just to make it as exactly what it is, just to take that out, made it more simple.
Okay. Discussion or comments? If not, then we will have a motion to amend and replace, and then the motion will be to pass. All right. The only other item we have is the request for the mayor's tree commission appointments, and given the short agenda tonight, the fact that these people have served a multitude of years, have significant experience, and, are willing to continue on, presumably, right, Mayor?
Right.
Then we'll go ahead and work our way through that appointment in new business.
Okay.
All right. That's all I have. Turn it back to the chairman.
Great. Are there any other items for finance? I do have one brief item. I had spoken with Director Martin about suspensions that we've been receiving, and we've been receiving quite a few of them. And he actually put out an email to department heads and others that, that we council would like to see less suspensions. And so I've had questions from a few department heads, and I would explain, and please correct me if you disagree, or please comment. Suspensions for, and we've had several of them, money-saving issues, timely issues, things that depend on action quickly. I think in some cases, maybe we haven't explained them. The sponsor, myself included, maybe hasn't explained the reason for suspension. We've just kind of made it commonplace that we would suspend. I would prefer 3 readings as much as possible, and I think that should be our target and our goal. But certainly, I want the department heads and others to know that when there is a reason to suspend, such as saving $89,000 on a contract, and I don't remember the dollar amount, but saving significant money on a contract if we sign by a certain date, or paying a bill that's past due, or things like that, certainly I think we would suspend. But things that the department head knows about, should know about, should have planned for, we would like 3 readings. Does that sum up most of our opinions? I just wanted to make that clear to everybody, because I don't want anybody to think that we won't suspend when we should suspend. I think we're willing to do that. But I do think we want it to be a practice of 3 readings whenever possible. And I think we owe that to the community to do that. So that's my comment. Are there any other items for finance? All right, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. 6:21.
The regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin at 6:30.
At Buckeye Toyota, our factory-trained technicians service all makes and models. And Buckeye Toyota has been a proud community supporter and family-owned for over 40 years. Check us out at mybuckeyetoyota.com.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our 2 locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster, and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Good evening. Welcome to Lancaster City Council. Please join me in a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this day and your many blessings. We thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of Lancaster. May you be with us tonight, guide our hearts and mind as we go about the business before us, and we'll continue to give you praise and glory. In Jesus' name, amen. I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Here.
Mr. Ailes?
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz? Here. Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Here.
Mr. McDaniel?
Here.
Mr. Porter?
Here.
Mr. Schoonover?
Here.
And Mrs. Teener?
Here.
Let the record reflect that all 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance tonight. Reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated February 13th, 2013.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
Email dated February 14th, 2023 regarding draft amendment submitted by Mr. Ayers. Email dated February 14th, 2023 regarding safety committee date change submitted by Mr. Matlin. Email dated February 14th, 2023 regarding safety committee area watch submitted by Mr. Matlin. Email dated February 22nd, 2023 regarding the 2022 LPD annual report submitted by Chief Snyder. Email dated February 27th, 2023 regarding finance agenda submitted by Mr. McDaniel. And finally, an email dated February 27th, 2023 regarding tree commission appointments submitted by Mayor Scheffler.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
A motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There is one. Notice to the legislative authority of a new liquor license to Nothing But a G Thing LLC located at 122 North Columbus Street, Lancaster, Ohio, 43130, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
What was the name again?
Nothing But a G Thing.
I just wanted to hear you say it again.
Brings back good memories.
Yes,
though.
indeed.
Just saying. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file communications. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have no special presentations or awards tonight. Are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During this time, Lancaster City Council sets time aside to allow the voters and taxpayers of the city to address us on any item or issue they would like. Is there anyone who would like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? Okay, well, thank you all for being here tonight. Reports of standing committees.
I have one. Finance Committee meeting minutes dated February 27th, 2023, submitted by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of special committees.
There are none to be presented.
We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the third reading of temporary resolution 27-23.
A resolution to amend the certificate of appropriations and other sources with the county auditor. Appropriate from the unencumbered balance, increase receipts, and complete a fund transfer in the general fund 1001 and the general improvement fund 3016 to fund the multi-purpose trail expense account. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel?
I believe Mr. Ayers has some comments about a motion he would like to make.
Mr. Ayers?
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to replace temporary resolution 27-23 by replacing it with temporary resolution 27-23 star as given to the clerk in writing prior to tonight's meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend temporary resolution 27-23 and replace it with temporary resolution 27-23 star as given to the clerk in writing prior to tonight's meeting. Discussion, Mr. Ayers?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that this is just to clear up the language to reflect the overall intent.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to amend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to amend carries 9-0. We now have before us temporary resolution 27-23 star. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 2723 star.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 27-23 star. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel?
Briefly, I think we all recall this discussion regarding this $150,000. When we looked at the 3 mil levy, there was some discussion about possibly attaching this type of request to that original 3 mil levy legislation. It was determined that there were some issues with the legislation and some complications, then we ironed those out and made multiple changes and amendments to that legislation, and we came up with this idea to satisfy the trails and mobility access, et cetera. So this was the, I guess, the compromise piece of legislation to cover that request for additional funding.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 27-23 passes 9-0. We now have second reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with temporary resolution 29-23.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor and the general fund 1001, and to authorize the issuance of a then and now certificate to pay Crossroads Community Planning LLC for technical assistance and for revisions to the new zoning code. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Second of 3 readings.
Second of 3 readings on temporary resolution 29-23. Temporary resolution 30-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the construction of the pickleball courts at Olivedale Park for the Lancaster Parks and Recreation Department, offered by Mr. Porter and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. Porter.
Second of 3 readings.
Second of 3 readings then on temporary resolution 30-23. Temporary resolution 34-23.
A resolution accepting the petitions, articles of incorporation, and bylaws of the Lancaster Downtown Special Improvement District, SID, and declaring a necessity for improvement of Main Street, Columbus Street, and Broad Street between certain termini. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Second of 3 readings.
Second of 3 readings then on temporary resolution 34-23. Temporary resolution 35-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids for the Lateral D Phase 2 Trunk Sewer Campground Road Pump Station Project. Offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Knoll. I will definitely resist the urge to do a suspension, so this will be the second of 3 readings.
Second of 3 readings then on temporary resolution 35-23. Temporary resolution 39-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to dispense with competitive bidding for a sole source provider for the city's asset and work management software and to declare an emergency, offered by Mrs. Teener and seconded by Mr. Ayers.
Mrs. Teener.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 3923.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 39-23. Discussion, Ms. Teener. Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mrs. Teener.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 3923.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 39-23. Discussion, Mrs. Teener.
Yes, in the end of January, we had already had a company that does this IT contract, and they had sold, so things changed. Our IT worked with Mitch at the Laws Director's office to get everything, the way it should be. The contract is exactly the same, the money is exactly the same, and to my knowledge, in 2 years, that we can go out and redo the contract. So this is just kind of continuing on, and it was a name change with the company since they sold.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 39-23 passes 9-0. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with Temporary Resolution 42-23.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the Fire Impact District 1 Fund 3022 and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the Fairfield County Auditor and to authorize the issuance of a then and now certificate offered by Mr. Matlin, seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes, the fire chief was here during finance to explain, this was a resolution that was passed back in 2021 to purchase a medic unit. The truck still has not arrived, and there was some clerical issue where the money, which we have, just got put back into the fund. So this legislation fixes that, makes it okay, and the truck might come, should come sometime in May. This is first of three.
First of three readings then on Temporary Resolution 42-23. Temporary Resolution 43-23.
A resolution authorizing the issuance of a then and now certificate for PNC/Visa for the Fairfield County Municipal Court's annual taser payment to the Axon Enterprises, offered by Mr. McDaniel, seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 4323.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of Temporary Resolution 43-23. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, as discussed in finance, this is a bill that was received on or about January 1st, was paid in January due to the contract requirement, amount of $4,300 to pay for tasers for the court staff, and we needed then and now to justify that expense.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Offered, I was going to say offered by. Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 4323.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record Temporary Resolution 43-23. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel.
Nothing further.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 43-23 passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 44-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids for the 2023 sewer rehabilitation project, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Doyle. Basically, Stephen Wellstead was able to give us a lot of good information on some of the sewers that have been actually cameraed to see which ones need to be repaired this summer, hopefully. And this will be the first of three readings.
First of three readings then on Temporary Resolution 44-23. Temporary Resolution 45-23.
A resolution strongly urging the Ohio Governor and members of the Ohio General Assembly to restore the local government fund to pre-recession levels, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 4523.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of Temporary Resolution 45-23. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, again, this was discussed in finance, but this is our resolution to advise the government of the state of Ohio that we disagree with the elimination of the local government funding, and we discussed some of the reasons for that. But I would add that, cities plan and budget based on income they expect to get, and this is going to be a significant change in that income. One of our state legislatures made the following statement, that if you want fancy firehouses, you want nice fancy police cars, pass a local tax. And to a large extent, I agree with that, except, again, this money was planned for by all cities in the state. All local governments that receive this funding were promised this many years ago. And in order to balance the budget, the state of Ohio, Governor Kasich took this away, and then it was lowered to the extent it is now, and we would like to see it restored to the original levels pre-recession.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? Yes, Mr. James.
I'm just wondering, how much impact do you think this will have? And I don't know this should be directed to either Chairman McDaniel or to the law committee.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's unclear right now. The governor has proposed in his budget, changing it from 1.66 to 1.7. Obviously, that's still significantly less than the 3.68. So if everybody who OML sent that call to action out to, and it's my understanding that the County Commissioners Association, and there are others that are planning on, reaching out to their legislators as well. Hopefully, they'll hear that and do something about it, but again, they didn't hesitate to take it away from us at the state level, so.
Right.
Don't know how successful we'll be, sorry.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. McDaniel.
One more thing, the Speaker of the House put out his agenda, which is different than the governor's. The governor's proposing a slight raise. The Speaker of the House and his legislative agenda is to eliminate it. So that's where we're at now. What's going to happen is going to depend on which side of the equation wins that battle, whether the governor gets his request or the Speaker of the House and the people setting the agenda for the House get their request. So we're looking at possible elimination or a very slight increase.
Yeah.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
I lost track. Was that suspend or pass?
Suspend.
That's what I thought. Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 4523.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 45-23. Mr. McDaniel.
Nothing further.
Any discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 45-23 passes 9-0. Are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we have no ordinances, we have no tabled legislation. Is there any old business this evening that anyone would like to discuss? Unfinished business? Yes, Mr. McDaniel.
I just wanted to discuss the legislation, I'll get you the number here. Coming out of Mr. Porter's committee regarding the construction of pickleball courts at Olivedale Park. This was a discussion we had at the last council meeting. I and others did some research. $335,000 was received by the park board in 2020. That money was CARES Act money, and the park board budgeted that money for pickleball courts in 2021. Because of COVID and other things, it did not happen in 21. Actually, I think it was 2021 it was received. Is that right? So it was 2021, not 2020. It was received in 2021. That was set aside. It was carried forward to 2022 and not used because of other projects or whatever might have happened with the park board, parks department. That money was then carried forward into 2023 specifically for pickleball courts, and it was CARES Act money that was being used.
It was, yes, and it was monies that was allotted for lost revenue, so they weren't the only ones that received funds from that for lost revenue, because they couldn't, it was for mine of going in and comparing 2019 through 2020. And of course, 2020 was the year that everything got canceled and all their programs, so they had a very large loss of revenue. So the CARES Act money was to help replenish that revenue that was lost because of COVID. So it is to be at that point designated on use on whatever the Parks Board designates.
So, and my last comment would be that according to Auditor Nettles, and correct me if I'm wrong, the state's already audited.
Correct. It's
that
already gone through a
funding.
detailed audit of exactly those funds, yes.
So that's something that would have been nice to be aware of when we discussed this at our previous meeting. But I don't think that Mr. Gayfield had that information at the time in the transition. I don't think he was aware of that. Again, I spoke with, Mrs. Teener and I met with a member of the park board, and he explained that they had passed that a couple years ago. And we had a lot of questions for him, and I know others have researched this particular topic also. But I think it was important to me to know that this was budgeted and approved nearly 2 years ago. So, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion on old business? Ms. Teener?
I'll piggyback off that though too, but Bowers Park had been, I think, in discussion, was it since 2019? And I understand they've got these fields, they're working on them and this and that, but that is something that, you know, we've been playing ball in this city for a whole lot longer than we have been pickleball. But my other concern is this bridge that's never been answered. Is it condemned or not? Because what monies are going to go to that to repair that bridge? Because it is still open. And, you know, I didn't use the word condemned. Somebody else a few meetings back did. And because I go by that bridge every day, it's not marked off. And, you know, we're waiting for what? What are we waiting for here? Either it needs to be blocked off until we know for sure, because if that is a Parks bridge, they're gonna be paying for that. That shouldn't be us paying for that. That should be a Parks project to pay for it. So I'm just very concerned about that. And, you know, they say, oh, you can't sue City Hall, but I'll tell you what, if we know something and we don't do something about it, yeah, you can. You know, there would be a public outcry. And the day I went there to actually, the next day after the meeting, I think, didn't you bring it up, Mr. McDaniel?
Originally?
At council, yes.
Yes.
Well, I went the next day, and there had already been, and it was snowy, and so I couldn't see the planks, but I did take pictures and send it to Paul and to Mr. McDaniel. And I just think this is a real liability. We need to fix this. We really do. If it isn't, that's fine. But we need to know for sure, because ball's gonna be playing, and I don't know where people are gonna walk when they park in that parking lot to walk. They're gonna have to go all the way around, or I don't know. I just think it's very, safety first is what we should talk about. Oh, there she is.
Just to respond, so the Board of Park Commissioners controls and manages all parks property. So it's not up to the city of Lancaster. The bridge belongs to the parks, and the control and management of those is the responsibility of the Board of Park Commissioners per Ohio Revised Code. And number two, like the city of Lancaster itself, the parks enjoy statutory immunity from liability for certain things. Things like public improvements, including infrastructure such as footbridges. So, yeah, anybody can sue anybody, absolutely. But we also enjoy statutory immunity from a lot of those types of claims, just so you're aware.
Well, that's fine, but I mean, this is something that, I mean, we know this, and you know, the parks, they want to put in pickleball courts, great, we got $300,000 appropriated, but what monies are gonna be used if something needs, you know, this needs to be taken care of. It really does. I mean, but yet they come to council, we have to say, okay, yeah, you can spend that. So, I mean, because they're coming to us for the $300,000 to approve that, correct?
It was budgeted.
Okay, but they're coming to
So-
us.
You control the purse strings essentially.
Exactly.
But if the money went to them through the budgeting process, you don't get to take that money away or decide what that money gets spent on.
But as a council.
That's up to them
But as a
exclusively.
council, we need to, you know, kind of stick up for our constituents, our citizens, and that. We really do. I mean, we need to.
I don't disagree, but only to the point that you're allowed to based on the Ohio Revised Code.
I understand.
Would be
Okay.
my advice.
But Mr. McDaniel brought it up. I didn't even know it. I don't think that anybody knew it, but he felt the need to bring it up at a council meeting a couple meetings ago. So it must have been a concern.
Having walked that bridge quite a bit, it was a concern. But I'm personally confident that the park board is aware of the situation, working on resolution.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Mr. Ailes?
You had a meeting with the park board member, and did you ask him that question?
Oh, yeah. He's like, oh, yeah.
Ask him about the bridge?
Yes, and if I recall, he said, oh, isn't that the bridge that's condemned? And I was like, why isn't it marked off? I mean, you know, he was the one that I believe brought that up to us, that he says, isn't that the bridge, because we were talking about bridges, the footbridge, he goes, isn't that, I believe he said, isn't that the bridge that's condemned? And I'm like, well, I don't know, it's not marked off.
I went to the last park board
Yeah.
meeting, and they did talk about the bridge, and they are looking at options, and the options are replace the part that needs replaced, replace the whole
Okay.
thing. You know,
And I'm fine
they're
with
still-
that.
They're still in the middle of investigation, and there was a very thorough discussion about where are the ball players. I love baseball, and and I love baseball in Lancaster, and I'm gonna tell you right now that they're gonna take care of the baseball players, the t-ball players, they're all gonna play ball. They're all gonna have the opportunity to play ball this year in Lancaster, Ohio.
I agree. I
Thanks to
think
the
that's
work of
right.
the Parks Department and the shuffling that they're doing, and it's not gonna be easy, but it's gonna happen, so.
I agree with that, but, you know, we do have, you know, we took, you know, with the project at Miller, we've taken that away. And I just want things to move forward, like with Bowers Park and that. I do. I understand they're gonna play, but I mean.
I hate to tell you this, but there hasn't been a lot of baseball played at Miller Park in years, and it's underwater half the spring.
I know that.
And you can't play baseball.
But when you
So
tell
they
somebody
moved it
you're
out
gonna
to
do
Shot
something,
Road,
you need
and
to
they
do
moved
it.
we didn't lose a lot when we lost that, because we lost it years ago when whatever they did with the water.
Oh, I know, I drive by it, I
it's-
see.
It has standing water during baseball season, which is very inconvenient.
Oh, I know that, in
It's not supposed
football
to
and
be
all that,
way.
I know that.
So.
But I just
But
think they need to move
moving it
forward.
to Bowers Park is a great idea, and moving it back into the neighborhoods is a great solution for 2 years. I think it's a great solution, so.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Mr. Mallon?
3 points, if I can remember all 3 of them. First, all city council members were well aware about what was gonna happen at Miller Park when the water plant started, because we all asked the questions, what would happen to the football field, what happened to the baseball diamonds? So it should not be a surprise to anyone that this has come up. The second is, we remember talking to our previous park superintendent, Mr. Tharp, when he discussed Bower Park, and just the length of time it would take to get grass to grow, to make a good place to put ball diamonds. That wasn't gonna happen this year or next year. And the third is, I don't see the pickleball courts as being an either or. What you're doing is getting citizens to argue that I want something because they're getting something. It's all gonna happen. You just need to be patient. And the pickleball courts, if you recall, a year and a half ago, we discussed how bad it was at Mare Park and how there's leagues in town. And I personally get a lot of phone calls from people. And the reason we haven't had the outcry now is because a lot of the ones I know live in Florida in the wintertime. But they're gonna be back in the spring. And just today, 2 phone calls saying, hey, is this gonna happen? Because they got calls saying, hey, we're making it not so. To put baseball players against pickleball, it's not right. Because this is, like I said, I'm positive the Parks Department, the Park Board is gonna get all this done. It's just we have to stick to the schedule that was originally put in place when this all started with the Miller Park and Bower Park. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mallon. Anyone else have anything on this? And we'll get, Mr. Mayor, we'll come to you after we go with Mr. Ehlers.
Just along with what Becky said, I think, and I understand what the law director says about us not having the power to tell them how to spend their money. But we do have the power to decide if they should go out to contract. So in that aspect, if we don't agree with how they're deciding to spend the money, we, as a council member, could vote no with our own power to say, no, we don't want you to go on a contract. So that is a power we do have with that. And then second, with the ball field, I think we'll be, I have a little worry about everything getting in order, but we have the fields to play the ball. My only worry is if the fields are going to be set right. I know last year, my family runs softball tournaments. I umpire in our local parks, and I had issues with home plate not lining up with second base, the pitching mound being 3 feet off of to the left of where home plate is. The Parks Department now hasn't done a good job at keeping those fields in nice playable conditions. Yeah, they're not covered in grass and weeds, but the bases are not set right. I don't know how you play a good game of baseball, a good game of softball, if your dimensions of the field are completely off.
Thank you, Mr. Ehlers. Anything else? Mr. Mayor?
I have a couple of observations. One is Bowers Park was donated in an estate to the city. And secondly, the grading work, which is significant out there, is being done by the Ohio Operating Engineers Union for no cost to the city. And any work that they did was delayed by the installation of the lateral D sewer line, which I believe is a 10-foot line from Campground Road over to Wilson Road, so it goes right through the middle of that park. So they couldn't get started until that project was finished. And I would add one more thing, that Resolution 30-23 has nothing to do with money. All it is allowing to happen is for the city engineer to put this project out for bid. And we would have all liked to have had it done earlier, but you may recall that Engineer Nolan accepted another opportunity late this summer, and Mr. Schonk is our new city engineer, and we have not been able to hire a replacement as assistant city engineer. So the engineering department is doing the work of 2 full-time engineers with 1 person. And unfortunately, summer paving program, the 6th Avenue resurfacing have all kind of taken priority over this. So this got delayed in coming to council when we would have all liked it to have gotten here sometime last fall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further discussion on this or any other item in unfinished business? Mr. James.
I've been personally contacted by several people that are members of Olivedale, that are avid pickleball people. I don't play the game myself. I don't really, I won't say I don't have a desire to, because that would alienate some people. But they are all excited about getting additional courts to be able to play this particular game.
Thank you, Mr. James. Further discussion? Mr. McDaniel.
I just wanted to mention, yeah, I understand all the comments about the baseball diamonds, and I am with Mrs. Teener on, it would be nice to have a plan. Not only did we know the Miller Park was going to disappear, the Parks Department knew Miller Park was going to disappear. I ran baseball and softball in the city as a recreational supervisor, so I called Miller Park, Miller Pond, affectionately. So I do understand that your point, Larry, is exactly right. There were times when baseball was not being played there. I am comfortable with the Parks Department's plan to play baseball in 2023. It's a very good plan. The diamonds are talking about playing on are fine. I've played on them. I know about them. The Boys Baseball Association has told Parks they're satisfied with that particular arrangement. But I think I'd like to have a plan. It can't be this, well, we'll do it when we do it. I think the boys playing baseball in this community deserve the same amenities the girls have. And Martin's Park is very good, and the other parks, not so much. Now, I can tell you the reasons why, but we won't go into those here. But there's significant reasons why. But and it has nothing to do with the parks taking putting the girls first. It doesn't. It has to do with contributions by the Girls Softball Association versus no contributions by the Boys Baseball Association. So I just wanted to make clear that I too share Mrs. Teener's concern about baseball and what amenities are they going to have going forward. Knowing that 23 is taken care of, what's the plan for 24, 25? And I know we can't answer that here. The park board will have to answer that. That's my opinion on that particular topic.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. Further discussion? All right, we'll move to new business then. We do have the appointment of tree commission members. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, there are 2 tree commission members whose term expires on March 31st of this year. Dave Burt, who is a longtime chair of the tree commission. He's been a member for 31 years. And Mike Zalislak, who's been a member for 8 years. Both are highly qualified in their positions and have lots of background in trees and forest management, et cetera. So I ask that respectfully that you approve a term renewal of 3 years each for those 2 gentlemen.
Is there a motion to approve the mayor's appointments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Mr. Ailes, second.
Mr. Ailes seconded. All right, so we have a motion and a second to appoint these 2 gentlemen to the tree commission, the names of which the clerk will have because I don't remember them. What are they?
Dave Burt and Mike Zalislak.
Yeah, those 2.
And I
Okay.
apologize if I mispronounced Mike's name.
Any discussion? Mr. Ehlers?
this is just my own opinion. I wish that if we're appointing people, that they would make an effort to at least attend our meetings when they're getting appointed. I have felt like that throughout my whole time here. And I feel like if you're getting appointed, you should come. I think that's the general advice and consent of it all, that they should come, introduce themselves. I know they've been on for a long time, but the council has not been the same for the same time. So for those reasons, I will be voting no tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
No.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
No. No.
Motion to appoint these two members to the Tree Commission has passed 7-2. Any other new business this evening? Yes, sir.
Just briefly, we talked a little bit about all the suspensions we've gone through, and I'm probably the biggest guilty party of all that. And I'm not trying to defend some of the departments, but one of the things that's driven a lot of our suspensions, especially on the water pollution, the wastewater, and stormwater, has been one extra large customer out on Wiley Road, no name mentioned. And that has driven the acceleration of a new water plant, has driven the acceleration of the additional wastewater treatment plant out on Campground Road, as well as the Lawn Street. And I do appreciate all of the support I've gotten from the council members in supporting that. Certainly, I want to, as best we can, provide the citizens with 3 readings, as the code requires. And but sometimes we have to look at the time is of the essence. And with all the short supplies of materials and things, there's a whole lot of perfect storm why we've asked for so many suspensions, and hopefully getting this on the record and at least letting the citizens know that we're doing our best to try and meet these schedules. And that's one of the reasons why we've made so many suspensions. The department heads, I have a lot of confidence in. They've done a really good job that when they know about something and it may not get it in time for us to be able to go 3 readings, I have to support that. But in the future, we'll do our best to try and go 3 readings and meet the requirements.
Thank you, Mr. James. Any other new business? Okay, we'll ask the clerk read our announcement of scheduled meetings, please.
The next regular session of council is March 13th. The meeting following is March 27th, both meetings here in council chambers at 6:30 p.m. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days, water pollution, March 8th at 8:30 a.m. at the 1897 conference room. Safety, March 13th at 8:30 a.m. at the 1897 conference room. Finance, March 13th, 6 p.m. here in council chambers. Law, March 15th at 11:30 a.m. at the 1897 conference room. IT Telecom, March 17th at 8 a.m. at the 1897 conference room. And Finance, March 27th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Very good. Are there any bills?
There's one bill for publication of legislation to MNCO paid on our PNC card in the amount of $68.05.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pay the bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I know of no need for an executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion. We adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. For the love of all that's holy, let's never have a short agenda again. Amen.
At Buckeye Toyota, our factory-trained technicians service all makes and models. And Buckeye Toyota has been a proud community supporter and family-owned for over 40 years. Check us out at mybuckeyetoyota.com.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.